My name is Eleanor, 37 years old, and every December I would watch dread build in my daughter Haley's eyes as Christmas approached. Not because she disliked presents, but because visiting my wealthy in-laws meant another year of painful inequality. 11 years we spent as outsiders in that cold mansion, watching my sweet girl perfect her brave face while her cousins received everything. I never imagined a simple white envelope would finally shatter the charade and change our lives forever. Before I share a story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if you have ever stood up for someone you love against all odds. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin where most families lived modest but happy lives. My parents owned a local bookstore that barely kept us afloat, but our home overflowed with love and laughter. I managed to earn a scholarship to Northwestern University, determined to become the first college graduate in my family. That was where I met Robert during my sophomore year. Robert came from old Connecticut money, his family name attached to a prestigious investment firm that had served wealthy clients for generations. With his polished appearance and quiet confidence, he seemed to belong to a different world entirely. We met in a literature class where, surprisingly, we were the only two students who defended an unpopular interpretation of Hemingway. Something sparked between us that day, and against all odds, we began dating. Our backgrounds could not have been more different. My idea of a fancy dinner was Olive Garden on birthdays. His family belonged to country clubs where a single meal cost more than my monthly rent. Yet Robert never made me feel less than. He listened to my dreams with genuine interest and shared stories about the pressure of family expectations. When he proposed after graduation, I was terrified about joining his world, but certain about my love for him. Then came the inevitable meeting with his family at their sprawling Connecticut estate. Margaret Walsh, my mother-in-law, greeted me with a perfectly practiced smile that never reached her eyes. She was tall, immaculately dressed, with perfectly coiffed silver hair and the posture of someone who had never allowed herself to slouch a single day in her life. "So lovely to finally meet the girl who has captivated our Robert," she said, her eyes scanning me from head to toe, lingering just a moment too long on my department store dress. Harold, my father-in-law, seemed kinder but distant. He shook my hand firmly, offered a genuine smile, then retreated to his study for most of my first visit. I would later learn this was his standard response to any potential conflict. Harold had long ago decided that maintaining peace with Margaret required strategic absences. Then there was Robert's sister Stephanie and her husband Brandon. Stephanie was essentially a younger version of Margaret, with the same carefully calculated warmth and scrutinizing gaze. Brandon was a former college athlete turned successful corporate lawyer who seemed perpetually concerned with appearances and connections. They had two children who Margaret frequently described as perfect specimens when she thought I couldn't hear. Abigail, their daughter, was tall, poised, and accomplished at everything from horseback riding to playing violin. Jackson, their son, was athletic and charming, already being groomed to follow in the family business tradition. They were pleasant enough children, but even at young ages, they seemed to understand their elevated status in the family hierarchy. Robert and I married despite Margaret's thinly veiled disapproval. We settled in a comfortable home about 40 minutes from his parents. When I became pregnant a year later, Margaret's response was measured enthusiasm. "Let us hope for a strong, healthy boy to carry on the Walsh tradition," she said, patting my stomach as if placing an order. Instead, we welcomed Haley into our lives. She was beautiful, with Robert's thoughtful blue eyes and my auburn hair. When she was 18 months old, we noticed she wasn't reaching certain milestones. After numerous doctor visits, we received a diagnosis of mild cerebral palsy. The condition primarily affected her left side, giving her a distinctive walking gait and occasional fine motor challenges. Robert was my rock during this period. "She is perfect exactly as she is," he would say, watching Haley determinedly figure out her own way to climb onto the sofa or hold a crayon. He adapted toys to make them easier for her to manipulate and spent hours researching the best therapies. Margaret, however, visibly withdrew when told about Haley's diagnosis. These things sometimes happen, she said with a sigh that carried unmistakable disappointment. Perhaps the next one will be completely healthy. I remember feeling my spine stiffen at her words, while Robert firmly replied there was nothing wrong with Haley that needed fixing. Despite these early warning signs, we maintained regular visits with the family. Robert believed his mother would eventually see Haley's wonderful qualities. When Haley turned 5, we decided it was time for her to experience her first Christmas at the Walsh family mansion. She was thrilled about meeting her cousins, who were 7 and 9 at the time. Haley spent weeks creating handmade Christmas cards for everyone, painstakingly drawing little family portraits with her improving fine motor skills. She practiced Christmas carols and even asked me to teach her proper tea manners because Grandma Margaret seems fancy, Mommy. The Christmas gathering itself was like something from a magazine spread. The 20-foot tree in the main hall sparkled with antique ornaments. Every mantel and doorway dripped with professional quality decorations. Staff circulated with trays of appetizers while holiday music played softly from hidden speakers. Haley approached it all with wide-eyed wonder, clutching her handmade gifts. When gift time arrived, Margaret made a show of distributing presents. Abigail received an expensive American Girl doll collection with custom furniture. Jackson got the latest gaming system with a dozen games. Other cousins and family members received similarly lavish gifts. Then came Haley's turn. Margaret handed her a small package containing a generic picture book about puppies, the kind you might pick up as an afterthought at a grocery store checkout line. "Thank you, Grandma," Haley said earnestly, immediately opening the book and showing genuine appreciation. I caught Robert's eye across the room. His jaw tightened momentarily before he forced a smile. Later that night, when I mentioned the disparity, he sighed. "Mom just needs time to adjust to Haley. She will come around." I wanted to believe him, but something in my gut told me this was just the beginning of a pattern. Unfortunately, my instincts proved correct. By the time Haley turned 7, the pattern of exclusion had become impossible to ignore. That Christmas, Abigail and Jackson received expensive electronics, while Haley unwrapped a set of generic art supplies from the discount store. The price difference was obvious, but more painful was the thought behind the gifts. Margaret knew nothing about Haley's interests or talents and clearly hadn't tried to learn. Despite the inequality, Haley continued creating thoughtful homemade gifts for her grandparents. That year, she spent weeks crafting a beautiful watercolor painting of the family mansion. Her art therapist had helped her develop techniques to work around her motor challenges, and the result was genuinely impressive for a child her age. When Haley proudly presented the framed painting to Margaret, my mother-in-law glanced at it briefly. "How creative," she said, setting it aside without another glance. Later, I noticed the painting had disappeared, while Abigail's rudimentary clay handprint from preschool held a place of honor on Margaret's desk. "Your grandmother just has different taste in art," I explained to Haley in the car ride home, fighting back tears at her crestfallen expression. "It is okay, Mommy. I will make something better next year," she replied, her resilience breaking my heart. When Haley turned 9, Margaret accidentally left her out of the annual family Christmas card. The glossy photo featured Stephanie's family prominently, with various cousins arranged artfully around Margaret and Harold. Haley was nowhere to be seen, though Robert and I appeared in a small photo at the bottom corner. "I cannot believe this was intentional," Robert said when I showed him, though his voice lacked conviction. I called Margaret directly, something I rarely did. "I noticed Haley was missing from the family Christmas card," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, dear, was she? I suppose we used the photos from the summer gathering. Haley was having one of her difficult days then, remember? She could not participate in the formal shoot because she was tired from walking around the grounds." Margaret's voice dripped with false concern. "She was resting for 20 minutes. There were plenty of opportunities to include her," I replied. "Eleanor, you have always been so sensitive. Not everything is a conspiracy against your daughter. Sometimes things simply happen," Margaret said dismissively. When I relayed this conversation to Robert, he finally began to acknowledge the problem. "I will speak with her before Christmas," he promised. But when the holiday arrived, He seemed to lose his nerve in the face of his mother's imperious presence. By the time Haley was 11, the exclusion had expanded beyond Margaret to include extended family members who seemed to take their cues from her. Cousins forgot to include Haley in their games. Aunts and uncles gave extravagant gifts to other children while handing Haley gift cards with minimal value. Haley, sensitive and perceptive, developed coping mechanisms to protect herself from the obvious rejection. "I do not really like those games anyway," she would say with a carefully rehearsed shrug when excluded from activities. "I am happy just watching." The most heartbreaking moment came when I overheard a conversation between Haley and Margaret that neither knew I could hear. I had gone looking for Haley during a family gathering and paused outside the library when I heard their voices. "Grandmother, do you think my painting could go in the art show at your country club?" "My art teacher said it was good enough for galleries," Haley was saying, her voice hopeful. "Darling, the club has certain standards. They showcase real artists, not just children's scribbles," Margaret replied. "Besides, we would not want to put you through that kind of scrutiny. People can be unkind about people who are different. Abigail's violin performance is more suitable for public appreciation. She is what people expect from a Walsh, you understand. The perfect one." I froze, waiting for Haley's response, my heart pounding. "I understand, grandmother," Haley said quietly. "Thank you for protecting me." That night, I found Haley in her room practicing walking without her slight limp, tears streaming down her face as she forced her reluctant muscles to move in patterns that caused her pain. "Sweetheart, what are you doing?" I asked, rushing to her side. "I am practicing walking like Abigail," she said between determined breaths. "If I can walk normal, maybe grandmother will put my painting in the show." I gathered her in my arms, my own tears falling into her hair. "Your walk is perfect because it is yours. Your art is beautiful. You do not need to change a single thing about yourself." When I told Robert about this incident, something finally shifted in him. The conflict between loyalty to his parents and protecting his daughter had been building for years, but this seemed to clarify things for him. "This cannot continue," he said firmly. "We need to rethink these Christmas gatherings." Yet somehow, through a combination of guilt, tradition, and Robert's lingering hope for reconciliation, we found ourselves continuing the pattern for several more years. Each Christmas became more painful than the last, with the disparities growing more obvious and Haley's practiced indifference becoming more convincing. When cleaning Haley's room before her 15th Christmas with the Walsh family, I discovered a journal hidden beneath her mattress. I would never normally invade her privacy, but it had fallen open to a page that caught my eye. "Reasons why Grandmother Margaret does not love me. 1. I walk funny. 2. I cannot play sports like Jackson. 3. I like art instead of music like Abigail. 4. I am not a real Walsh. 5. I am broken." That list, written in my daughter's careful handwriting, broke something in me. I showed it to Robert that night, watching as he read each item with growing horror. After last Christmas, when 15-year-old Haley received a $10 bookstore gift card while her cousins unwrapped laptops and designer clothes, I found her crying silently in the guest bathroom of the mansion. She quickly wiped away her tears when she saw me, plastering on that familiar fake smile. "Just something in my eye, Mom," she said with forced cheerfulness. The new cologne Uncle Brandon got must be irritating them. It was in that moment, watching my beautiful, kind, talented daughter pretend she was not being systematically rejected by people who should love her unconditionally, that I knew something had to change. As December approached this year, with Haley now 16, I reached my breaking point. We were sitting at our kitchen table reviewing the annual invitation to the Walsh family Christmas extravaganza when I finally spoke my truth. "I cannot do this anymore, Robert," I said firmly. "I will not subject Haley to another year of this treatment. We are not going." Robert did not immediately respond. He stared at the embossed invitation card, tracing its gold lettering with his finger. "Eleanor," he said finally, "I need you to trust me on this. This will be the last time we do this, I promise." "That is what you said last year," I reminded him. "And the year before." This time is different, he insisted, an unfamiliar resolve in his voice. I have been working on something. I had noticed Robert staying up late in his home office over the past few months, mysterious phone calls he would take in private, documents quickly minimized when I entered the room. At first, I had feared the worst, but his demeanor had been determined rather than guilty. What exactly have you been working on? I asked. Please, just trust me. After this Christmas, everything will change, he promised. Before I could press further, Haley entered the kitchen. She immediately spotted the invitation, and her shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly before she forced them to relax. So, another Christmas at grandmother's house? She asked with practiced nonchalance. Honey, we do not have to go this year if you do not want to, I offered. Haley shrugged. It is fine, Mom. Really? I kind of like seeing the mansion all decorated. Besides, Jackson mentioned they got a new pool table, and he said he would teach me to play. The hopeful note in her voice made my heart ache. Even after years of disappointment, she still looked for connections with her family. If you are sure, I said hesitantly. Totally sure, she replied with that smile that never quite reached her eyes. Besides, I made grandmother a really cool sculpture this year. My art teacher thinks it is the best thing I have ever created. As December 24th arrived, we packed our overnight bags for the annual stay at the Walsh Mansion. Haley carefully wrapped her sculpture, a striking abstract piece that somehow captured the essence of the family estate through fragmented perspectives. It truly was exceptional, showcasing her growing artistic talent. Robert seemed unusually calm as we drove the familiar route to Connecticut. Typically, these trips made him tense, caught between his wife's justified anger and his mother's disapproval. Today, however, he almost seemed serene. You will see, he said cryptically when I questioned his mood. Everything will make sense soon. The Walsh Mansion looked like something from a holiday movie set. Professional lighting illuminated the historic facade, while enormous wreaths adorned every window. Inside, the decoration theme this year was Winter Wonderland, with white and silver dominating every room. Staff in formal attire circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Margaret greeted us in the grand foyer, elegant as always in a designer dress that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. Robert, Eleanor, she nodded coolly before turning to Haley with her practiced smile. And Haley, my goodness, you have grown since last year. Haley stepped forward carefully, balancing her wrapped sculpture. Merry Christmas, grandmother. I brought you something I made. How thoughtful, Margaret replied without reaching for the gift. Wilson will take that to the gift room for now. She gestured toward a staff member who promptly relieved Haley of her creation. Dinner that evening was a tense affair, at least for me. 20 family members seated around an enormous table laden with gourmet food and fine china. Stephanie dominated the conversation with stories of Abigail's college acceptance letters. Princeton was very persistent, but we feel Yale might be the better legacy choice, she announced to appreciative murmurs. The tennis coach there has practically guaranteed her a spot on the team. And Jackson has been offered early recruitment for lacrosse at 3 Ivy League schools, Brandon added proudly. The Walsh athletic genes showing through. I felt Haley stiffen beside me. Though she never complained, I knew she was aware that her physical limitations meant such athletic achievements would never be hers. Haley received recognition in the National Young Artists competition. I offered during a brief pause in the self-congratulation. Her piece was selected for the traveling exhibition. How nice, Margaret said dismissively before immediately turning to Harold. Darling, tell everyone about the new yacht club membership. Harold, who had been mostly silent throughout dinner, looked uncomfortable but obliged his wife by launching into details about exclusive amenities that no one really cared about. After dinner came the tradition I had grown to dread most, the elaborate gift-giving ceremony in the main parlor. The ritual always followed the same pattern. Margaret would direct the distribution of presents from beneath the towering Christmas tree, each gift meticulously wrapped by professional staff rather than family members. Abigail went first this year, unwrapping a small jewelry box that contained car keys. She squealed appropriately as Brandon explained the new luxury convertible waiting in the garage. Jackson received the latest gaming console not yet available to the general public, along with a custom gaming chair and professional-grade headset. He high-fived his father while Margaret beamed approvingly. Various cousins unwrapped designer clothes, electronics, and exclusive experiences. Even Robert received an expensive watch that he accepted with a polite thank you. I received a generic gift basket of bath products, the same one I suspected Margaret's assistant purchased for any female acquaintance on their secondary gift list. Then came the moment I had been dreading. All presents had been distributed, and Haley sat empty-handed, her practiced smile firmly in place. Margaret cleared her throat delicately. "Haley, dear, it seems your main gift is on backorder. Supply chain issues, you understand. It should arrive sometime in January." It was the same excuse she had used last year, except the backordered gift had never materialized. "That is perfectly okay, grandmother," Haley replied smoothly. "The holidays are about family, not presents." I gripped the armrest of my chair so hard my knuckles turned white. The practiced grace with which my daughter handled this deliberate exclusion made me simultaneously proud and furious. I glanced at Robert, expecting to see the usual conflict on his face. Instead, he looked oddly composed. As the family began to chat about their gifts, Robert slowly stood up, commanding attention simply by his unusual action of interrupting the carefully choreographed event. "Actually," he said in a clear, steady voice, "I have one more gift to present tonight." The room quieted as Robert reached inside his jacket pocket. The crisp white envelope in Robert's hand seemed to glow under the crystal chandelier lights. It was a simple thing, rectangular and unadorned, yet something about the deliberate way he held it caused conversation to fade into silence. "What is this about, Robert?" Margaret asked, her voice carrying a note of irritation at the disruption to her carefully planned evening. Robert did not immediately answer her. Instead, he moved to stand beside Haley and me, a physical statement of allegiance that was not lost on anyone in the room. "For 11 years," he began, his voice steady and clear, "I have watched a pattern unfold in this family. A pattern I tried to deny, then excuse, then rationalize away." Margaret's expression shifted from irritation to wariness. "Robert, this is hardly the time for whatever this is. We are celebrating Christmas as a family." "Are we?" Robert asked, the simple question hanging in the air. "Because from where I stand, only certain members of this family are truly included in the celebration." I felt Haley tense beside me, her hand finding mine and squeezing tightly. This was uncharted territory for us all, Robert openly challenging the family dynamic. "I have documented 11 years of inequality," Robert continued, tapping the envelope. 11 years of watching my daughter receive token gifts while her cousins are showered with extravagance. 11 years of seeing her beautiful artwork ignored while Abigail's average violin playing receives standing ovations. 11 years of watching her practice her fake smile in the mirror before these gatherings so no one would know how much the exclusion hurts her. Stephanie shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Robert, you are being dramatic. No one has intentionally excluded Haley. Haven't they?" Robert replied calmly. "Last Christmas, Abigail and Jackson received gifts totaling over $20,000 each. Haley received a $10 gift card to a bookstore that closed 3 months earlier. The year before, professional photographers were hired for the family portrait, yet somehow every configuration excluded Haley except for one group shot where she was placed at the far edge, easily cropped out. Shall I continue with examples?" The room had grown so quiet you could hear the antique grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Margaret's face had transformed from wariness to a cold mask, while Harold stared intently at his hands. "I have been planning this moment for months," Robert continued, his voice gaining strength. "At first, I thought I just needed to have a serious conversation with you, Mother. Then I realized the problem runs much deeper than that." He opened the envelope and removed several papers. "This is the deed to a new house in Colorado, where Haley has been accepted to the Boulder Arts Academy, one of the finest art schools in the country." He placed one document on the coffee table. A small gasp escaped Margaret's lips, but Robert wasn't finished. "This," he said, producing another document, is my resignation letter from Walsh Investment Group, effective January 1st. I have accepted a position with a firm in Denver that values work-life balance and family wellness. You cannot be serious, Margaret said, her voice barely above a whisper. Leaving the family business? Moving across the country? All because of some perceived slight toward Haley? Perceived? I could not hold back any longer. There is nothing perceived about it, Margaret. It has been deliberate and consistent exclusion from day one. This is betrayal, Margaret hissed, her composure cracking. After everything we have done for you, Robert. The connections, the education, the opportunities. What you call betrayal, I call protecting my daughter, Robert replied evenly. This will be our last Christmas with this family, at least until there are significant changes in how you treat Haley. Margaret's face hardened as the full reality of what was happening dawned on her. This wasn't just a momentary disagreement. Her son was fundamentally altering the family structure she had controlled for decades. Harold finally looked up, and to my surprise, he gave Robert a small, almost imperceptible nod of understanding. Stephanie attempted to salvage the situation. Robert, Haley has always been so sensitive. Perhaps she has misinterpreted ordinary family dynamics as rejection. We all love her, of course. Do you? Robert challenged. When was the last time you asked about her art? Or invited her to join Abigail for an activity? When was the last time you remembered her birthday without Eleanor reminding you? Brandon shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unable to meet Robert's gaze. The cousins looked confused, with Abigail showing the first signs of genuine discomfort as the reality of the situation became clear. I have evidence of the pattern, Robert continued, pulling out a small notebook. Gift disparities documented with photographs and receipts. Social exclusions noted with dates and specific incidents. Mother, you once told Haley her art was adequate for someone with her limitations when she proudly showed you a painting that had won a regional competition. Margaret flushed. I never said such a thing. You did. Haley spoke up for the first time, her voice small but steady. It was my watercolor of the mountain lake. You said it right before you put it in the drawer of your desk instead of on the wall with Abigail's recital photos. Robert then reached into his pocket once more and pulled out a small gift box wrapped in simple blue paper. He knelt in front of Haley. This Christmas marks a new beginning for us, he said gently. No more pretending. No more accepting less than you deserve. With trembling hands, Haley accepted the small box. The room remained utterly silent as she carefully unwrapped it, lifting the lid to reveal what was inside. Chaos erupted in the Walsh family parlor as the significance of Robert's announcement registered, with everyone present. Margaret pressed a hand to her chest dramatically. I think I need my medication, she announced, her voice wavering. All this stress is affecting my heart condition. It was a tactic I had seen her employ before when conversations turned in directions she couldn't control. Harold, however, surprised everyone by finally finding his voice. Enough, Margaret, he said quietly but firmly. The theatrics won't help now. Margaret looked at her husband with shock and used to any form of contradiction from him. Before she could respond, Stephanie jumped in with an attempt at damage control. Robert, Eleanor, she began, her voice dripping with insincere concern. If there have been misunderstandings about Haley's place in the family, we deeply apologize. Perhaps we could discuss this privately instead of ruining Christmas for everyone. This isn't about ruining Christmas, I replied, finding my voice. This is about 11 years of watching my daughter be systematically excluded and devalued by people who should love her unconditionally. Family isn't supposed to make you constantly prove your worth. Family doesn't rank children based on their abilities or appearances. Meanwhile, Haley was staring at the contents of the small box Robert had given her. Inside were a set of keys and what appeared to be an official letter. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded the paper. What is it, honey? I asked gently. It is an acceptance letter to the pre-college program at the Boulder Arts Academy, she said, her voice filled with disbelief. And keys to my own art studio? She looked up at Robert questioningly. Robert nodded, smiling at her. The house in Colorado has a separate guest house that has been converted into an art studio for you. Professional-grade equipment, north-facing windows for natural light, everything your art teachers recommended. Tears filled Haley's eyes, but for once, they weren't tears of hidden pain. You did this for me? We should have done it years ago, Robert said, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. Margaret had recovered enough to attempt regaining control of the situation. This is ridiculous. You're uprooting your entire life over imagined slights. Robert, you're clearly not thinking clearly. The Walsh family has a legacy here in Connecticut. Your position in the firm, your connections, your future all depend on maintaining those relationships. No, Mother, Robert said firmly. Those things depend on making the right choices for my family. My real family, he added, putting his arm around Haley and me. I think what Margaret is trying to say, Harold interjected, his voice gentler than his wife's, is that perhaps this decision seems drastic. Surely there's a way to address these concerns without such extreme measures. That might have been possible years ago, I replied. But we're well beyond that point now. Margaret's expression hardened further. So, you're just going to throw away generations of family tradition because your daughter feels left out sometimes? Children often feel excluded, Eleanor. It's part of growing up. Haley needs to learn that the world won't coddle her because of her condition. The room fell silent at Margaret's words. The euphemisms finally dropped to reveal the ugly truth beneath. Even Stephanie looked shocked at her mother's bluntness. And there it is, Robert said quietly. The real issue all along. You've never accepted Haley because of her cerebral palsy. Margaret flushed, but didn't deny it. Instead, she attempted another approach. Robert, I've always wanted what's best for this family, including Haley. But you have to understand, there are certain expectations, certain standards that the Walsh name carries. And you think Haley doesn't meet those standards? Robert challenged. I think, Margaret said carefully, that we all want children who reflect well on the family name, who carry forward the strengths and accomplishments we value. Is it so wrong to focus more attention on those who excel in traditional ways? Yes, I said firmly. When it means systematically making a child feel worthless, it is absolutely wrong. The heated argument continued, with Margaret attempting various tactics to regain control. First came denial, then accusations that we were oversensitive, followed by attempts to reframe her actions as tough love. When those failed, she finally resorted to an unexpected admission. Fine, she said, her voice tight. Perhaps I have struggled to connect with Haley. Do you know how difficult it is to see you, Robert, devote so much attention to her? The way you light up when she shows you her artwork? The way you adapted your entire life to accommodate her needs? You never showed that kind of dedication to the family business, to the legacy your father and I built. Are you saying you're jealous of my relationship with my daughter? Robert asked incredulously. Margaret didn't answer directly. The Walsh family has standards, expectations. When you married Eleanor, I accepted it despite her background. When Haley was born with her condition, I tried to make the best of it. But you chose to make her the center of your world instead of focusing on what really matters for the future of this family. The raw honesty of her jealousy hung in the air, uncomfortable and revealing. While this confrontation unfolded, Harold quietly approached Haley. To everyone's surprise, he pulled a small package from his pocket. I've had this for months, looking for the right time, he said softly, placing it in Haley's hands. I should have been braver sooner. Haley unwrapped it to find a beautiful artist's sketchbook bound in leather with her name embossed on the cover. Inside the front cover was a note. To my talented granddaughter. Your art brings beauty to a world that needs it. Love, Grandpa Harold. You've seen my artwork? Haley asked, surprised. Harold nodded. I've followed your progress online through your school's gallery page. That landscape series you did last spring was extraordinary. This quiet exchange did not go unnoticed by others in the room. The cousins, who had been silent observers until now, began to show varying reactions. Jackson, 17 now and more mature than his mother, approached Haley awkwardly. I'm sorry, he said simply. I didn't realize. I mean, I never thought about how all this must have felt for you. Abigail remained defensive, standing beside her mother. It's not our fault if Aunt Eleanor and Uncle Robert chose to see everything as a slight against Haley. Abigail, Brandon finally spoke up, surprising everyone. That's enough. He turned to us with uncomfortable sincerity. I've never felt right about many things that happened at these gatherings, but I never spoke up. That's on me. The family gathering had completely fractured now, with people taking sides or attempting to process the sudden upheaval of their comfortable assumptions. I caught Haley's eye across the room and motioned toward the door. I think we should pack our things, I said quietly. We can stay at a hotel tonight. Haley nodded, clutching her grandfather's gift and the keys to her future studio. As we moved toward the staircase to collect our belongings, Robert faced his mother one last time. This isn't how I wanted this evening to go, he said. But maybe it's exactly how it needed to go. The truth needed to come out. You'll regret this, Margaret warned. When the excitement of playing hero fades, you'll miss everything you're throwing away. No, Robert said with certainty. The only thing I'll regret is that I didn't do this years ago. We packed quickly, the sounds of continued argument drifting up from downstairs. As we carried our bags to the car, the grand mansion that had intimidated me for so many years suddenly seemed smaller, its perfect decorations hollow and meaningless. As we drove away, Haley looked back at the twinkling Christmas lights growing smaller in the distance. Are we really moving to Colorado? She asked, her voice a mixture of hope and disbelief. Yes, Robert and I answered in unison, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were truly united as a family. The car ride home from the Walsh mansion was filled with a strange mixture of emotions. Relief, uncertainty, sadness, and hope all swirled together as we processed the evening's events. Haley sat quietly in the back seat, occasionally touching the keys to her future art studio as if to confirm they were real. Did I cause all this trouble? She finally asked in a small voice. I never meant to come between Dad and his family. Robert immediately pulled the car over to the shoulder of the road and turned to face our daughter. Haley, listen to me, he said firmly. You did not cause any of this. The problems in my family existed long before you were born. Their inability to appreciate you for the amazing person you are is their failure, not yours. Tonight wasn't just about how they treated you, though that was the catalyst. It was about choosing what kind of family we want to be. Your father's right, I added. This confrontation was long overdue. We should have taken a stand years ago. Haley nodded slowly, processing our words. So we're really moving to Colorado? We really are, Robert confirmed. I've been working on the details for months. The house is already purchased. My new position starts February 1st, and the Boulder Arts Academy is expecting you for the spring semester. When we arrived home, the simple Christmas decorations in our modest house seemed more genuinely festive than all the designer grandeur we had left behind. Robert pulled up images of our new home on his laptop, giving us a virtual tour of the mountain property just outside Boulder. It sits on 3 acres, he explained, showing us exterior views of a beautiful craftsman-style home with mountain views. The main house is 4 bedrooms, and this separate guest house has been converted into an art studio. The studio was everything an artist could dream of, with vaulted ceilings, abundant natural light, built-in storage for supplies, and professional-grade equipment. Haley's eyes widened as Robert scrolled through the images. This is really mine, she whispered. All yours, Robert confirmed. The previous owner was a landscape artist who designed the space specifically for painting and sculpture work. There's even a small gallery area where you can display your pieces. But what about your job, Dad? The family business? Haley asked, still struggling to comprehend the magnitude of the changes. Robert's expression turned serious. The truth is, I've been unhappy at Walsh Investment for years. The new position with Aspen Financial Group offers not just better work-life balance, but more innovative approaches to investment. I'll be helping manage their arts endowment fund, actually something I've always been interested in. And your mother? Will she ever forgive you? Haley asked. Robert sighed. That's up to her. I've left the door open for reconciliation, but only if she can truly accept you and treat you with the love and respect you deserve. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. We began packing our belongings, deciding what to take to our new life and what to leave behind. Each item we sorted became symbolic somehow, representing either the past we were leaving or the future we were embracing. 3 days after Christmas, we received an unexpected visitor. Harold stood on our doorstep, alone, and looking somewhat lost without Margaret orchestrating his movements. "May I come in?" he asked hesitantly. Robert nodded, leading his father into our living room where half-packed boxes created a maze of our transitional state. "Margaret doesn't know I'm here," Harold said once seated. "She's still processing everything that happened." "You mean she's still angry?" Robert translated. Harold nodded. "Yes, that too. But I couldn't let you leave without saying some things that need to be said." He turned to Haley, who had entered the room cautiously. "Particularly to you, Haley." Haley sat down across from her grandfather, her expression guarded after years of disappointment. "I have failed you as a grandfather," Harold said simply. "I watched Margaret's treatment of you and said nothing. I noticed the disparities in gifts, in attention, in basic human kindness, and I remained silent. My silence made me complicit." "Why?" Haley asked, the single word carrying the weight of years of rejection. Harold considered the question seriously. "Fear, primarily. Fear of disrupting a marriage that has always operated on Margaret having complete control. Fear of confrontation. Perhaps also a lifetime of having others make my important decisions." He looked directly at Haley. "None of those are adequate excuses. They're simply the truth." From a large envelope, Harold withdrew several photo albums and memory boxes. "These belong to you," he said, placing them on the coffee table. "Family history Margaret has kept from you. Photos of Robert as a child, family heirlooms that should have been shared, mementos of events you were excluded from." As Haley carefully opened the first album, Harold continued speaking to Robert and me. "I've set up a trust for Haley's education and artistic development. Margaret doesn't know about it yet. It's not meant to buy forgiveness, but to begin making things right." "Dad," Robert began, clearly conflicted. "Please," Harold interrupted. "Let me do this one thing correctly. Too little. Too late perhaps, but sincere nonetheless." Before leaving, Harold embraced Haley for what might have been the first time. "I hope to visit you in Colorado, if that would be welcome." "I'd like that," Haley replied softly. The remainder of December brought difficult conversations about boundaries with Margaret and Stephanie. Robert spent an emotional hour on the phone with his mother, making it clear that while he was open to rebuilding their relationship, it would only happen with genuine change on her part. "I love you, Mother," he said finally. "But I love my daughter more than your approval." Margaret's response was cold silence, followed by a formal email from the family attorney regarding Robert's shares in the family business. Christmas Day itself was spent in our own home, just the three of us creating new traditions that celebrated Haley's uniqueness rather than trying to force her into a mold she was never meant to fit. We cooked together, played board games, and set up a small makeshift art space in the garage where Haley began working on pieces for her new studio. Neighbors and friends, hearing of our upcoming move, stopped by with well wishes and small gifts. Haley's art teacher brought specialized supplies for the high-altitude conditions of Colorado, along with introductions to artist colleagues in Boulder. On New Year's Eve, the three of us stood in our backyard watching distant fireworks illuminate the sky. Robert raised a glass of champagne, while Haley and I held sparkling cider. "To new beginnings," he toasted. "To a year of authenticity, of living by our own standards rather than someone else's. To standing up for what matters," I added. "To finding where we truly belong," Haley finished, a genuine smile lighting up her face for the first time in longer than I could remember. 1 year later, our Colorado home was transformed from a new house into a true sanctuary. The mountains visible from our windows had witnessed our family's rebirth, a process both painful and beautiful. Haley, now 17, had flourished in ways we could hardly have imagined back in Connecticut. The Boulder Arts Academy had embraced her talent immediately. Her distinctive artistic style, once dismissed by Margaret as adequate for someone with her limitations, was recognized as genuinely innovative by instructors who saw past physical differences to the creative soul beneath. "Your daughter has extraordinary spatial perception," her new mentor had told us after her first semester. "The way she translates three-dimensional concepts to two-dimensional space shows remarkable sophistication." Haley's confidence grew steadily as she received genuine feedback rather than condescension disguised as concern. Her walking gait, once a source of self-consciousness, became simply another aspect of herself she no longer felt compelled to hide. When a younger student with similar mobility challenges joined the academy, Haley volunteered to mentor her, breaking the cycle of shame that had once been imposed upon her. The true culmination of her transformation came in November, when the Boulder Community Gallery hosted Perspectives, Haley's first solo exhibition. The collection featured 12 pieces exploring family dynamics through fragmented architectural elements. The centerpiece, titled Mansion Reconstructed, reimagined the Walsh family estate deconstructed and reassembled in a more organic, inclusive form. The opening night drew art lovers from across the region, including several gallery owners from Denver. Haley, dressed in a vibrant blue dress that complemented her auburn hair, moved through the crowd with newfound poise, discussing her techniques and inspirations with genuine confidence. "I never dreamed this would be possible," she whispered to me during a quiet moment. "Having people see my work, really see it, not just pretend to look while thinking about my legs." Robert had found his own renaissance in Colorado. His position at Aspen Financial Group allowed him to combine financial expertise with his long-suppressed interest in arts patronage. The work energized rather than drained him, and for the first time in his career, he returned home each evening with stories to share rather than stress to suppress. Harold had kept his promise to visit, making quarterly trips to Colorado without Margaret. His relationship with Haley blossomed slowly but steadily as he showed genuine interest in her artistic development. He attended her gallery opening, visibly moved by the work and the confident young woman his granddaughter had become. "Margaret should see this," he said quietly as we stood before Mansion Reconstructed. "Is she ready to?" I asked. Harold sighed. "No, not yet. But perhaps someday." Margaret remained entrenched in her position, refusing any compromise that might acknowledge her role in the family fracture. She had redecorated the mansion, removing all photos of Robert, Haley, and me. According to Harold, she referred to Colorado as Robert's midlife crisis and predicted we would come crawling back once we came to our senses. Stephanie initially maintained solidarity with her mother, but cracks in that alliance began appearing by summer. The catalyst came unexpectedly through Jackson, who contacted Haley via social media after seeing her artwork featured in a regional arts magazine. "Your painting was incredible," he wrote. "I always knew you were talented, but this is next level. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you more." This initial reconnection led to regular video chats between the cousins. Jackson, preparing for college himself, seemed to be questioning many of the values he had been raised with. His relationship with Haley developed into something neither had experienced before, genuine cousin friendship based on mutual respect rather than obligatory family connection. Abigail took longer to come around. Her identity had been so thoroughly built on being the perfect grandchild that Haley's success threatened foundations she hadn't realized were unstable. In September, however, a handwritten letter arrived from New Haven where Abigail had begun her freshman year at Yale. "College is making me question everything," she wrote. "For the first time, I'm meeting people who don't care about family names or traditions. They value authenticity over perfection. It's making me see our family differently, especially how grandmother treated you. I'm sorry I was part of that system. Your art is amazing, and I was wrong." My own journey of healing took different forms. For years, I had subordinated my feelings to maintain peace with the Walsh family. The freedom to express genuine emotions without calculating their impact on Margaret's approval was both exhilarating and terrifying. I began working with a therapist to process the accumulated stress of a decade trying to protect my daughter while navigating toxic family dynamics. "You've been carrying armor that's become too heavy," my therapist observed. Learning to set it down doesn't mean you're vulnerable. It means you're finally free. That freedom manifested in unexpected ways. I returned to my long-abandoned interest in environmental education, volunteering at a local nature center, and eventually securing a part-time position developing programs for children with disabilities. Creating accessible nature experiences for kids who might otherwise be excluded brought a fulfillment I hadn't anticipated. Our new Christmas traditions evolved organically to reflect our values rather than inherited expectations. Instead of formal dinners with expensive gifts, we focused on experiences and creative expression. Haley designed our holiday cards featuring Colorado landscapes. We volunteered at community meals before enjoying our own simple celebration. Gifts were thoughtful rather than extravagant, often handmade or experiential. Harold joined us for these celebrations, bringing stories and traditions from Robert's childhood that had been overshadowed by Margaret's formality. For the first time, Haley heard tales of her father's early artistic talents, drawings and sculptures Margaret had discouraged as impractical, but Harold had secretly preserved. "You have his eye for composition," Harold told Haley, showing her childhood sketches Robert had made. Margaret wanted him focused on business, but he had real talent. "Why didn't you ever tell me this?" Robert asked, visibly moved by these recovered memories. "Fear," Harold admitted simply. "The same fear that kept me silent about so many things. I'm trying to do better now." As we approached the anniversary of our dramatic departure from Connecticut, Robert, Haley and I sat by our fireplace reflecting on the year's transformation. "I was thinking about worth today," Haley said thoughtfully. "How we measure it, how others try to define it for us." "What conclusions did you reach?" I asked. "That worth isn't something other people can give or take from you," she replied. "Grandmother tried to make me believe my worth was less because my body works differently. But my worth was always whole, always complete. I just needed to be somewhere I could recognize that truth." "That is profound wisdom," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "Wisdom your grandmother has yet to learn at 70 years old. Do you regret leaving?" I asked him, the question I'd sometimes wondered but never voiced. "Not for a single moment," he answered without hesitation. "My only regret is not doing it sooner. The family name, the business connections, the social standing, they were all just golden handcuffs. What we have now, this authentic life we're building, this is true wealth." As we celebrate this new Christmas with chosen family rather than obligatory relations, I find myself reflecting on what real family means. It isn't about shared DNA or inherited traditions. It isn't about mansions or designer decorations or perfect family photos. True family is about belonging exactly as you are. It's about being valued for your unique qualities rather than punished for your differences. It's about unconditional love that doesn't require performing or pretending. Sometimes the bravest act of love isn't staying and enduring. Sometimes it's walking away and creating something new, something true. The envelope Robert pulled out that Christmas night wasn't just a deed to a house. It was permission for all of us to redefine family on our own terms. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family obligation and protecting someone you love? What would you have done in our situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more authentic family stories. Remember that your worth is innate and complete, regardless of how others might try to diminish it. Thank you for listening, and may your holidays be filled with genuine love and acceptance.